Hello there, very good morning and welcome to Recount Watch. I'm your host, Eddy Layne, for this morning's program. And of course, I have with me Priya Manickchand, candidate of the People's Progressive Party Civic. Priya, good morning and welcome to the program.
Hi, Eddy. Good morning. Thanks for having me. Good morning to all of our viewers, Guyana and Guyanese living in Guyana and in diaspora.
So we are getting to the finish line. We are probably just about 2 days away, I suspect, if all goes well in terms of the numbers that are being counted. And the picture is getting much and much clearer as to the victory that the People's Progressive Party maintained about March 4th, that it won the elections by about 15 to 16,000 votes. We're seeing a clearer picture now. I think now Guyanese are getting a clearer picture from GCOM itself, because we have had the statements of poll that we received from GCOM out there. There were claims that those statements of poll, that we would have tampered with them or something of that sort. GCOM has not released their statements of poll, nor did the APNU AFC the copies that they too received from GCOM. So the recount is basically cementing the position of the PPP. I think the lead right now is about 16,000 plus votes. I think it will hover somewhere around there, right down to the end of the process. However, though, Priya, despite the lead, despite the clear picture coming out as a result of the count of the ballots, we are still having the baseless allegations of irregularities coming from the APNU AFC, who have failed miserably in terms of producing any evidence to support their contentions.
So, Eddy, thank you again for having me. Let's back up a little bit. When the problems first started, which was around the 5th, well, the 4th, but we really saw full evidence of it on the 5th of March, 3 days after the elections, when Mr. Mingo, in my view, on behalf of and at the instruction of the APNU AFC, fiddled with the numbers to give the APNU AFC votes that they did not have, and votes that did not reflect the will of the people, particularly to be able to offer them a victory in this election. You saw Mr. Granger celebrating that victory. You saw Valda thanking the good Lord for the victory. You saw people dancing, supporters that were brought out dancing in the streets. The PPP then on the Thursday, that was the 5th, published the statements of poll that were issued by GCOM to the political parties and that were posted up outside of the polling places on a website called www.statementsofpoll.com, I believe, or region4.com. Now, what happened, Eddy, very quickly, is 100 things happened after that. We didn't have statements of poll. The PPP didn't generate statements of poll. It was always GCOM statements of poll. GCOM has refused up to today's date to disclose what their statements, what their original copy of our statements say. The PNC has never disclosed theirs. The AFC has never disclosed theirs. The APNU has never disclosed theirs. The APNU AFC has never disclosed theirs. They have refused completely. What they did say was that the PPP manufactured and fiddled with statements of polls and put them up on this website, and that those statements were false. What are we seeing now? We're seeing now in the recount a 99% accuracy, actually more, 99.96, I believe, percent accuracy showing up between the statement of poll and the statement of recount. What that means is when the presiding officers and the polling agents and the other ballot clerks and everybody counted ballots on election night, what they wrote down on election night was very, very similar, 99.96 similarly, placed with what we're seeing at the recount when these boxes are open in wide view of everybody else. So, for example, in Region 1, the APNU AFC on the night of elections got 3,905, and at the recount they got 3,909. The PPP on the night of election got 8,022. The PPP at the recount got 822. In Region 2, and I'll just give you 3 regions, just to show. In Region 2, on the night of elections, the PPP, the APNU got 7,343. That was shown in our statements of poll and GCOM statements of poll. At the recount, the APNU got 7,340. The PPP had gotten 18,788 on the night of election. On the night at the recount, the PPP has gotten 18,785. In Region 3, the APNU had gotten 23,811. This on the night of election. At the recount, the APNU got 23,808. The PPP had gotten 47,855, a sound walloping. On the night at the recount, the PPP has 47,851. Throughout the regions, the entire gain or loss for the APNU, they gained 108 votes more. And for the PPP, they gained 166 votes more. That's the difference, no material difference. So all along, you can see that the statements of poll that were relied on by the PPP, that were always GCOM issued, has been matching the recount. Now let's look at Georgetown and Region 4, particularly. Region 4 is divided into East Bank, South Georgetown, North Georgetown, and East Coast. That's how we speak about Region 4 or District 4. The East Bank is finished. It's counted, it's tabulated. Let's see what we have for the East Bank. On the night of elections, the APNU got 21,624 and the PPP got 23,355. At the recount, the APNU got 21,614. The PPP got 23,391. Just a difference, the APNU lost 10 votes. The PPP gained 36 votes. South Georgetown, the APNU got 39,780. The PPP got 6,371. The PPP was walloped in South Georgetown. At the state on the night of election, shown by the PPP's published statements of poll that GCOM issued. And on the recount, the APNU got 39,743. PPP got 6,371. APNU lost 37. PPP gained 0. It was the exact same thing like we published on election night. North Georgetown, 22,000 is what 494 is what the APNU got on elections night. PPPC got 10,996. At the recount, the APNU got 22,474. The PPPC got 11,014. The APNU lost 20 votes. The PPP gained 14 votes. The point I'm making, Eddie, is the statements of poll match almost exactly the statement of recount. And the numbers we're seeing in the recount, the only thing left is it's East Coast. The East Coast of Demerara is the only place left to be recounted. We have finished counting 92% of the boxes and tabulating 92% of the boxes. At the end of that, the PPP has a 16,000 vote lead. In any other country in this world where that is done, they would have called these elections for the PPP a long time ago. There is no way the PNC can make these numbers up back. There's no way the AP and UAFC can make these numbers back, and they certainly can't surpass. And why is that? What's left to be counted are those 162 boxes that remain to be counted are primarily from very, very strong supporting communities, strongholds of the PPP, like Enmore and Strathspey and those kinds of communities that have traditionally supported the PPP and have more reason to support the PPP now after the AP and UAFC shut them down completely. Their sugar estates and cost jobs and drop taxes on them and tax their electricity and water and so on when they had no money coming into their households. So that's what's left there now. So what do we see? Coming back to the first question you asked me, what we see yesterday and this morning are and increasing in the wild claims, and I say increasing because they were coming all along, and the very wild claims that suggest that the PPP rigged these elections. It's like amazing thing that we would rig elections and the APNU would win those elections as they sought to celebrate. What we are seeing very clearly is that the numbers of that were disclosed on election night, the numbers that were published in those statements of poll that show the PPP winning this election by at least 15,000 votes, that is being realized in this recount every single day. We have only 162 boxes left, recount left. It is unlikely that that trend will change. What you're seeing now is a claim that because a stamp pad is missing or because a list is missing, somehow or the other, these votes are not validated. Now, yesterday, a very dangerous thing happened. GCOM allowed an objection to having votes counted based on the fact that because the allegation by the APNU that because a list was missing from the box or a stamp pad was missing from the box, that these votes are not validated. That cannot happen. GCOM cannot change the rules at the end of the game. Nobody knew at the beginning when we were counting Region 1 and they had documents missing, or Region 2 or Region 10, and there were documents missing. Nobody knew we could say we're not counting those votes. In any event, the PPP would not have taken that line because we have to give effect to the will of the people. And it's a silly line because a missing list does not mean that people did not go to the polling place and cast their ballot. That is what must be given effect to. So the decision by GCOM needs to be overruled or needs to be reversed. I understand it was a decision by the Secretariat. The objections are untested. At this point, they're just objections made by a political party that is 8% or 163 boxes from going into the opposition. They don't want to lose power, and so they're making stories up as they go along. We have to give effect to the will of the people of this country, Eddie. It's more than political parties. It's more than what the PPP deserves or the PNC deserves. It's what the people of Guyana want. And at some point, I wish the leaders of the AP and UAFC would understand that this is about what the people of Guyana want. And the people of Guyana will make up their minds based on how their lives play out in front of them. Are they improved? Are they suffering? Are they seeing open discrimination in their homes? Are they seeing people losing hope around them? Are they seeing a reduction in their lifestyle? And that's how people make these decisions. So any attempt by the AP and UAFC to derail this process is going to be judged very harshly by the people of Guyana. It's not going to be tolerated. So let's say that very clearly. I see a gathering there this morning. I see photographs coming out with gatherings of the AP and UAFC huddling and showing force. And I saw one of their agents last night posting on Facebook that the people of Buxton are coming down to protest. Now, the people of Buxton should feel very offended that they're being exploited in that manner. The people of Buxton are entitled, and I believe are good law-abiding citizens who want to see democracy upheld. So I don't know why they're exploiting the name of the good people of Buxton, and that should stop immediately.
But just on that last allegation, on that claim, I think they're attempting, this is desperation, Priya, at the highest level, and they're attempting to drag people through the mud and to drag them into their narrow political agenda. But talking about the claims that are being made and missing documents and so forth, we have seen the changing narrative since March 2nd, especially during, as the recount got started. We have seen them shifting the goalposts, changing their positions. One time they won the elections, the next time the elections were fraudulent, the next time they won the elections. Matter of fact, a few days ago when the numbers came down to about 7, I think yesterday, day before yesterday, when the numbers for the PPP came down to about 7,000, a 7,000 lead, no less a person than Walter Lawrence, the chief liar, posted that very soon the numbers, the APNU numbers will overtake the PPP as we go to the end of the recount. They have now changed that position again. But one of the troubling things that I saw when they claimed the boxes at Montrose should not be validated because documents were missing. And I want to bring up the here. This is a post from Wendy Ann. I think she is one of the returning officers that worked at the Montrose School. And she said here, if I can read this out, throughout this entire election shenanigans, I chose to remain quiet. But now that the polling...
It's not showing, Eddie. I'm not seeing it on the screen.
It should be on the screen there now.
Right, now, yeah.
Good. So, if I, yeah, so she said, throughout the elections, the entire election shenanigan, I chose to remain quiet. But now that the polling station where I worked was brought into question, I can't keep quiet anymore. On behalf of the presiding officers that worked at Montrose Primary School, please note that this is a lie. And she's talking about the post about fraud, electoral fraud uncovered. All documents for the 6 polling stations were submitted to the DRO as per instructions by the clerk to the RO, Mr. Mingo, the RO for Region 4. The original SOP attached would explain the desperation to the lie, and she attached the SOP. This is beyond ridiculous. Priya, what is interesting, or what is coming out?
Before you go on there, let me read for you Robin Singh's post. And Robin Singh worked as a polling agent for the People's Progressive Party at Sophia. And Robin Singh said this, and he made this post yesterday at 6:37 p.m. Robin said this: at 9 p.m. on the 2nd of March 2020, I irritably asked the presiding officer of the polling station what was the reason for the delay in sealing the ballot box and delivering my party's copy of the statement of poll. We had all been working there since 4:30 a.m. that morning. An uneventful day of polling concluded and counting had commenced and finished without incident at approximately 8:30 p.m. Why then were we all standing around? I was told we were waiting on a deputy returning officer who had to give the all clear before the box could be sealed and the SOPs distributed. I was a bit loud with my condemnation of this new bullshit, procedural inserted by GCOM. The law does not cater for a deputy returning officer being present or given instructions to a PO. I do not know who, what, or where this DRO was invented, but the PO was adamant that he could not act without the consent of the DRO. My objections were made in the presence of representatives of the Carter Center and can be verified easily. 5th of June 2020, and I'm hearing of procedural errors made by polling presiding officers' adherence to the DRO instructions. Not a single voter should be disenfranchised because of the DRO action. It would be an injustice too monstrous to contemplate. Do not disenfranchise the electorate. The price is higher than the price is worth. Now, what do I, why did I read that, Eddie? I read that because it appears that in Region 4, based on what Wendy Ann is saying, and based on what Robin Singh is saying, and they're willing to have these stories verified, Mr. Mingo, who was the presiding officer and who was the crook in this whole story.
The returning officer.
Returning officer, sorry. And who has been the person that has been accused of theft and not only of votes, but of people's rights and spirit and will and all of that. Mr. Mingo was the returning officer, and Mr. Mingo gave instructions to his deputy returning officers that they were to go to these polling places. This is the account coming out of people who were there. And the boxes were not to be closed until the DROs were there. And that the DROs must collect certain documents. Now, the girl, Wendy Ann, is saying on another post, I don't know if you saw it, it's all over Facebook. She's saying, look, we had instructions and training from GCOM that this list of documents must go into the ballot box. But on that night, the DRO said, no, don't put it in the ballot box. Give it to us and we will take it to Mr. Mingo. And they complied with that instruction. So now we have, Eddie, the persons saying who worked in those polling places that all the documents exist and they are in GCOM's possession. So the fact that a list is missing out of a box, the fact that the stamp pad is missing out of a box that should have been there, doesn't mean people did not turn up to vote. It does not mean that people did not cast their ballot. It does not mean that the votes are not valid or validated. It simply means that they followed instructions that were perhaps wrong. But more than that, what it means is that GCOM is in possession of the documents. GCOM now wishes to, or has given an instruction to say the absence of which would invalidate those votes. So the issue that is, it's really a mountain out of a molehill. Nothing here happened untoward. And that is why people throughout the day, all the international bodies, the Commonwealth Observer Group, the Organization of American States, that observer group, the CARICOM observer group, the UN, the local groups, the Private Sector Commission, the Bar Association, the AmCham, everybody who observed these elections, including the agents of the APNU and the PPP and the president of this country and Claudette Singh, the GCOM chair, everybody has said that the elections day machinery ran as it was intended to run. The elections were smooth, they were free, fair, free from fear and lawful. The count ran well, the election night count. Where the problem came was in one district, Region 4, with the tabulation of that count. So everybody has concluded that the election day went well. Now, if you have this large number of fraud, I think the last number I heard from them was 9,000 votes affected or fraudulently cast. We live in Guyana. You really think 90,000 people could walk into those polling places without a national riot happening here in this country, without that becoming news at 9 o'clock on election day, 9 a.m. I mean? So that did not happen. The country knows it didn't happen. The world knows it didn't happen. And that's why you saw the election day being commended, the election process being commended, not only by Guyanese, but by our peers and partners across the world. And I'm not joking when I say world, I mean every country in the world. And similarly, the attempt to steal the election was condemned by the world and this country in like manner. And that's why you see, Eddy, the statements that have recently been released by the ABC countries, America, Britain, Canada, and the EU. I think last night, the Western Hemisphere Secretary, the Deputy Secretary of State or Assistant Secretary of State of the United States that has a responsibility for the Western Hemisphere, Michael Kozak, also issued a statement. You see, I saw yesterday the OAS issued a statement. And what are they saying? What are all these partners and allies in the world saying about these states? The PSC issued a state private sector commission. What is everybody saying today? In the last 48 hours, everybody's saying, listen, Mr. Granger and Mr. Jackdale, the two of you agreed to this recount. And the two of you said that you would abide by whatever the numbers, the ballot papers showed in the recount, what people said they wanted through their ballots. And we expect you all to abide and stay loyal to that commitment that you made. Now, Eddy, we could all read between the lines. Given what the AP and UAFC has been saying and threatening, I think they're being put on notice. In fact, I believe Mr. Kozak said very clearly on behalf of the State Department and government of the US last night that we're prepared to work with people who give effect to the will of the Guyanese people. They would support a government and institutions where the voice of the Guyanese people are heard. So it means the converse could be read into that if we do not believe that the voice of the Guyanese people were heard, if their will was not given effect to, then we cannot support, and we would consider any such government illegitimate. So I want to be very clear that not only is Guyana going to object to this, the world is going to object to that.
Yeah, Priya, I was about to make the point, going back before I get to those statements, going back to the actions of Mr. Mingo, the fact that he would have collected those documents, it seems that this elaborate plan by the APNU AFC in collusion with Mr. Mingo was hatched way before the elections. Because it's only Region 4 you're hearing stories of DROs being instructed to collect documents that were supposed to be in the ballot boxes in the first place and deliver them to the RO. So Mingo had his plan all along in collusion with the riggers at Congress Place to execute this. I think this now, vindicates the position of the PPP even before the elections, that the people of Guyana were upset with the APNU AFC for failing to deliver on promises it made. So they themselves knew that they were going to lose the elections. So they hatched the plan using Mr. Mingo. Why? Because why they choose Region 4 is because traditionally they have won Region 4. So they thought executing a rig in Region 4 somehow would have gone unnoticed because of the fact that they have a history of winning Region 4 over the years in the elections. So this plan was hatched even before the elections. I wanted to move from that to just to share with the public the statement by Mr. Michael Kozak. Unfortunately, I'm getting a bit of a difficulty to bring this up. I'm trying to expand the Zoom here. Good. So I'm getting the Zoom. I'm going to share the statement by Mr. Kozak. Mr. Kozak's statement, the statement from the embassies.
Before you share that, I just wanted to point out that Mr. Mingo lives in Region 5, has lived in Region 5 his entire life. Mr. Mingo worked in Region 5 at the elections, in the last 2 elections or 3 elections in Region 5. Mr. Mingo was brought to Region 4 by the GCOM machinery that we believe is corrupted in there and corrupted in favor of the APNU or deliberately to give benefits to the APNU AFC. And so this unfolding now that Mr. Mingo instructed in defiance of his training at GCOM and in defiance of the training that the presiding officers got, that he instructed his DROs to collect certain documents and not to have them placed in the box is, and you have to understand how this works. A presiding officer standing there, a deputy returning officer who is far superior to him or her comes in and says, the returning officer, Mr. Mingo, says, don't put those documents in the box. Give them to me. I'm taking them to him. They don't pick up the phone and call Claudette Singh to see if this is true. I made Madam Chair this thing true. I should give this, but they don't even have her number. Well, I would say none of them have her number. It's not, you don't check that. This is your superior. Remember, the rig didn't happen then. So they're just listening to instructions from the authorities of GCOM. And so the entire move of Mr. Mingo from Region 5 to Region 4 in the first place is really quite suspicious. And it makes a lot of things fall into place now that we're seeing this.
All right, so let me just bring the statement up here, Priya. And this is what Michael G. Kozak said. We look to President Granger and opposition leader Jagdeo to honor their commitments to respect legitimate recount results. The U.S. will support those leaders and institutions that adhere to Guyana's democratic principles and ensure the voice and will of the people is heard. And this statement is in response. Well, they shared the OAS statement, and if we look at the joint statement as well, Priya, from the EU, the US, Canada, and Britain, we will see clearly that they all recognize that the recount results is what will determine the winner of these elections. Why? And you are legally trained and you can explain this better than me, but based on my layman's interpretation of the Constitution, the laws governing elections, both the Representation of the People's Act and the Elections Act. I'm trying to remember the correct name. However, it simply says that any aggrieved party has a right to request a recount. but the words used in there, it says final count, and a recount is a final count. My understanding as a layman, when you have a final count, when you have a final of something, that is what is expected to be accepted by all parties involved. So the fact that they have keep all the statements, the OAS statement, the Michael Kozak's statement, the joint statement by the ABCE countries, clearly indicate that you both agree on a recount. Now that the results of the recount will be made public, or that should be the basis for any declaration that is made. I think, and I think somehow that the APNU AFC is coming to the realization that the truth is coming out from these boxes, despite the fact that James Bond chose to throw all of their supporters who worked as polling agents, and even some of their candidates who worked as polling agents, I suspect, under the bus, claiming that they somehow colluded with the PPP to rig the elections. I think James Bond is now heading down a path of being declared somehow as mentally unstable. To suggest that, 2,000 plus supporters and or candidates who worked as polling stations decided to collude with the PPP. If that's the case, Priya, that these people indeed colluded, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Then James Bond and the PNC, AP, and UFC should accept that they have done wrong by even their own supporters, that they would decide to say, look, we don't need you anymore. We're going to work with the PPP to get you out of there.
It is unlikely, Eddie. Listen, on election night, election day, we had 2,339 polling places. In each polling place, you had at least 3 GCOM staff. You had a police officer, so that's 4. You had the PPP agent and the PNC agent, because in every single polling station, you had a PPP agent and a PNC agent. So that's 6. And then you had the small parties. So you had a good 10 to 12 persons in each polling place. Each polling place, even if you had 6 in the same building, you had 6 multiplied by 10, 60. Strangers who came together on election night. Many of them didn't meet each other before. Many of them do not know each other. To suggest that the GCOM staff and the PPP staff and the PNC staff and the police all got together to rob the APNU AFC it's a really bizarre suggestion. It's something that stretches our imagination. It is very, very unlikely that that happened. And in fact, it did not happen. As you said, if it is true that all these parties, strangers, many of who are supporters of the AP, not many, most of who in those places, I will venture to say, are supporters of the PNC who were hired by GCOM. If they're all willing to collude with the PPP to throw the PNC, APNU, AFC out of office, then the AFC, APNU, PNC has really done a rotten job, and it is felt by far wider a group than just the regular citizens here. Now, the thing is, Eddie, that I feel for the polling agents, because James Bond is sitting there saying, shame on you. Shame on you. You went there to represent the PNC and the APNU, and look, you colluded with the PPP. Well, let me tell you something. That really hurts my heart. And the reason it hurts my heart is because ordinary people sent their PNC grassroots working people, send their children and their wives to those polling places to do the work and be the eyes of the APNU AFC. And people got up there. You heard Robin, if you were working in a polling place, you had to be up at 3 o'clock in the morning and there by 4:30 and worked all through the day and go to trainings before and trainings, briefings after, and so on. It's a lot of work, and not for its voluntary work mostly. If there's a stipend paid, is nothing. It can't compensate for what people really actually put out. Interestingly enough, the president's children and grandchildren didn't go and sit in those polling booths. Valda's children and grandchildren didn't go and sit in the polling places. James Bond and his wife didn't go and sit in those polling places. The Simona Brooms, well, their children are at Ivy League universities on the backs of the taxpayers of this country. ordinary people sent their children to look out for the interests of the AP and UAFC, and those ordinary people are being stomped on and stabbed in the back and thrown onto the bus right now, just because the AP and UAFC is 162 boxes away from losing the election. So instead of sitting back and saying, hold on, our policies were rotten, they failed the people of this country. We fired 7,000 sugar workers. We cost 14,000 jobs in the forestry industry. We taxed electricity. We taxed water. We didn't give the teachers the 50% increase we promised them. We took away the bonus from the joint services. We treated women and old people like crap. Those are not the things that are to blame. Right now, it's these young people, and mostly female, that went into those polling places to help out the AP and UAFC. That is reprehensible. It is shameful, and James Bond needs to apologize to his supporters. I feel badly for them. I don't believe we don't share the same politics. I believe the PPPC is better for this country. But those people who went into those boxes on behalf of the APNU were representing and standing up for what they believed in. To throw them onto the bus like that now is just awful. They should just leave that party.
Priya, I want to thank you very much for joining me this morning to discuss current issues surrounding the national recount, which is coming to an end. I think we could safely say we are at the penultimate day. We expect maybe to finish tomorrow, if not, probably by Monday. And the numbers are clear, showing clearly that the PPP won the elections, a position that the PPP would have held since maybe March 4th, March 5th, after they would have tabulated the statements of poll received from the Guyana Elections Commission. And I think the AP and UAFC also would have done their tabulations and knew that they lost the elections. But we have to wait and see to the end of the process to ensure that the will of the people is respected, and that the legitimate winner of these elections is declared. So again, Priya, thanks for joining me this morning, and to our viewers, we want to say thank you very much for being part of this program. We're going to be back here at 1 p.m. with another update. Until then, we say have a good rest of the day. Bye for now.
Thank you, Eddie.